Hello everybody, and welcome to DOD45, Drawing Over Discussions, 45 minutes with a special guest. I'm your host, Ty of Art by Ty, and today I will be in discussion with hip-hop recording artist, lyricist, entrepreneur, family man, and founder of Strange Famous Records, Mr. Sage Francis. So I first discovered Sage on Napster, probably like 20-something years ago. I was young, dumb, and selfish, and I hadn't considered the implications that stealing music was going to have on the music industry. So I went on a 2-week binge in my parents' basement, downloading music from Napster because I heard that they were about to be shut down. I feel guilty about that. I hope that I've made up for that thievery through all of my purchase. In fact, I've purchased every single Sage release since that time. I buy merch. I've always tried to support artists and bands that I'm a fan of by buying and rocking their merch. I thought it would be a little tacky to be wearing a Sage shirt during our discussion now, but anyway, I digress. So I discovered a shit ton of hip-hop artists through Napster, including Sage, and I've been an avid fan ever since. The track Makeshift Patriot, which I believe Sage released for free in 2001 after the 9/11 attacks, cemented my adoration for Sage's music, lyrics, and sentiment. The track is, I think, also on the Known Unsoldier, Sick of Waging War CD. I later did a drawing inspired by Makeshift Patriot, which many of you are aware of. It's my piece, Folly of Empire, which is the one with the tortoise with the ruins of Rome on its back and the firefighters erecting the American flag amidst the remains of the Twin Towers. On Sage's Life album, which was released in 2010, he has a track on it called The Best of Times, to which, and this is no bullshit, the first few times I heard it, I cried. Literally had tears welling up in my eyes. And every time I would share that song with a family member or a friend, when I would see them getting the goosebumps, I'd cry again. It's a powerful track, and I implore you to go out and get it, preferably through the Strange Famous Bandcamp or through the Strange Famous website. Anyway, enough of my ramblings. Let's get into it. It's an honor to have him here in discussion for the DOD45 series. Everybody, I would like to welcome Sage Francis. Sage, thank you for joining us.
Yeah, thank you very much, Ty. It's my pleasure.
So what I will do is I start the timer. So we'll have 45 minutes to have a discussion with you. I tend to stay away from interviews that you've been through already. Your career's been so long that you can look up any video and hear all the same questions that people have asked you. And so I think there's enough information there. My conversations are mostly just a discussion. We're going to learn a little bit more about you, if you're open to that.
Sounds great. And thank you for being considerate with the fact that I always have to answer the same questions every interview. But yeah, I like it.
Yeah. All right, I'm going to start the timer and I'm going to start drawing. I once heard in an interview that you did, I think it was when you were with Scroobius, someone was interviewing you and asked you if you had a favorite animal. And at the time, I think you said elephant, but I know you like cats. So I think I'm going to mess around with a cat and an elephant on this drawing. All right, here we go. I'm going to set the timer. We got 45 minutes to have a discussion. When the buzzer goes off, that's it. That's all the time we have.
Boom.
All right. So let me, first question, Dead Milkmen or Dead Kennedys?
Dead Milkmen, but I love both groups. One of the last shows I ever played in the States was with the Dead Milkmen, and it's the last show my wife was able to attend. And I've referenced them several times in my music in fact, I remember on the 2004 Fuck Clear Channel tour, the house music we played was the best of Dead Milkmen. So in between sets, the Dead Milkmen would be playing. Dead Kennedys, I own several of their albums, but it lacks some of the silliness I need, or I needed at the time. So yeah. I hate to choose between the two, but yeah, Dead Milkmen forever. Someone recently on the Sage Francis group on Facebook was like asking me about if I would ever do a cover album. And I'm pretty opposed to doing a hip hop cover album, but I've always thought at some point it would be cool to cover different genres and cover several songs that I love that I know aren't too popular. And one of them was a really obscure Dead Milkmen song. And it's so funny. It's been so long. I can't even remember what the name of it is, but I have the files somewhere that I had to edit it. And man, it was on the Richard album, or I forget what it's called. But anyways, yeah, that they came up recently in my discussions, and I do believe I'm going to cover a Dead Milkmen song,
Oh,
start to finish at some point.
I guess, I mean, you know him personally then.
Rodney, yeah. I made a good connection with Rodney, and we've stayed in touch via Twitter. But when I play Philly, he would come out to the shows, and then we'd hang out for a little bit and talk about cats.
Oh, awesome. How do you go about approaching doing a cover? You said an album or a song?
Yeah, a song. I
Yeah,
just I feel like I would do what initially what I wanted to do was learn how to play guitar. And
right.
then everything would follow that. Not that I'm much of a singer, but there are some songs that are in my range. And some songs I find myself singing a lot in private, and I'm like, man, once I learn guitar, I'm totally going to do this live. And then that just never happened. So I have a lot of musician friends who I think would like to help out on the music side of stuff if I never get around to learning one of the several guitars that I own.
Yeah.
And yeah, we'll go from there. We'll just do a studio project. And
How long have you been saying you're gonna learn to play the guitar?
since the early 2000s.
Yeah, I only ask because I'm the same. Like, I have many guitars and I keep picking them up and playing. I'm like, I'm gonna learn this thing, and then
Yeah, I mean, I took lessons at one point, and it just my life gets so busy, just running my career as well as the record label, and now a family, and maintaining this house and yard and pool is like all the stuff that comes with old age. It's
yeah,
like,
absolutely.
my midlife crisis? I could either buy a Ferrari or learn guitar, so I should probably learn guitar.
All right, here's another one for you. Violent Femmes or Violent J?
Oh, Violent Femmes, obviously the first album, but Violent J, I got to give a big tip of the hat for his, step into the FBI and just being an all around badass. The dude obviously is all about it, and
Yeah,
believes in, what he's created, the kind of followers that they've acquired over the years, and all through blood, sweat, and tears. The DIY ethic on their end far outmatches Violent Femmes, who I'm not sure if they're still recording, but their first album is so incredible. That was like a constant play in my CD changer for a while.
that first album I put in all of my playlists, my nostalgia playlist to go back, because that album is unmatched and no one's ever done anything that
Not,
great.
yeah, and especially not them, because I bought other albums of theirs and nothing even comes close to just the energy and the style and just the vibe that they had on that first record, which is unfortunate because it's really special. But I guess sometimes that's how albums are. You
Yeah.
catch people in the exact right time period, with the right influences behind them, and boom, out comes magic. So
Yeah,
yeah.
and then when you try to recreate that energy that came from organic energy, it feels forced, and in my opinion, usually the album just flops.
Yeah, you can't do that. Every time someone mentions it to me that they want me to do part 2 of any album that I've done, it's just a ridiculous notion, and nothing I could do ever, even if I really wanted to. It doesn't matter because you can't recapture that. You can only live in your moment and capture what is happening out, in your exact circumstance. So
Yeah.
as much as people want it, and I understand it because I want it from other artists as well. So I don't get upset about it, but I being unable to truly communicate it to the masses is what's frustrating.
Whatever album or whatever song happened where your career had changed, when that happened, did you have a concern of like, oh, I've got to match that now? I've got to try to create that. And then was there fear that was kind of there?
Yeah, I made a concerted effort to hit on different hit from different angles all at the same time so that I wouldn't get boxed into one style or sound. Fortunately, I had the spoken word background, which opened me up to all different types of subject matter that weren't familiar to or popular in hip hop, like the battle rap scene, because I was known as a battle rapper as well. And had I come out with a battle rap style album, I could have cornered myself into a thing where I couldn't get out of. I've seen a lot of people do that. I've seen a lot of careers suffer because of that. So it was always important to me. It helped to have the mixtapes where it would just be a mishmash of all different styles, draw in different types of audiences, and it also helped that I had a hardcore and punk background as well, so I could draw from different styles and inspirations and not always hit on the hip hop inspirations, um,
Right.
because it's just kind of impossible when I hold like a group like Public Enemy to such a high standard. Obviously, they're an inspiration, but I can't make albums like Public Enemy. I
Right.
have to just let them inspire me and to do my own thing. And it was a, yeah, I was a straight up hip hop kid through and through for the longest time. And I'm just lucky I had friends who forced me to go to punk shows when they did, because then I realized I can just put out my own records the way I want.
Is it difficult once rap battle artist gets pigeonholed into that? Like, what's the growth from there?
It's tough for them because their audience becomes almost strictly battle rap fans. So then if you hit them with songs that aren't generated by punchlines, you lose their attention because that's what they're interested in.
Yeah.
Unless you do it well enough, because if you're a battle rapper, you have to have your brain working in certain ways. There's a certain gear you have to be in for, for you to always be open to what punchlines or punchy lines are going to hit, and that is exhausting. You even when I was just doing it for fun, like on the Nonprofits record, we wanted to have more of a punchy battle rapish slant to the music, but and I would put myself in that gear in order to write those songs, but I was very thankful that that is not something I had to like live and die on. It was just a vacation from the other Sage Francis material.
Yeah. All right. How about Portishead or Oysterhead?
Portishead, through
Yeah.
and through. Portishead. I am
Yeah.
a huge diehard fan of Portishead. Um, Beth Gibbons also has a record with. Um, she did an album with another guy. I forget the name of it, but there's like 3 songs on there that are on my. Beth Gibbons and Rustin Man. It lacked the hip hop presence that the Portishead beats have, but just her voice is incredible, and the feelings that she emotes really. I remember I played a festival in the UK that she was also a part of, and I never got to meet her because she was like hiding in some back area and just like has like she's not I think she has like social anxiety or maybe even stage fright. So I respected that, but I really would have loved to just shower her with love and appreciation for all the sanity she kept in me when I would travel. Back in the day when I was traveling and didn't have cell phones or anything, it was like I had an iPod and Portishead would just be playing in it, and it provided me comfort. But I don't know who Oysterhead is, so that's the first. That's the first.
Oysterhead was Les Claypool spin-off or
Oh, okay.
one of his projects. How about Bootsy Collins or Boots Riley from the Coup?
I gotta go with Boots Riley. Boots Riley's the homie, and I am in awe of what he's been able to do over the course of his career. Starting back when I first got their first tape, I remember
Is that the Kill My Landlord?
yeah, I think it was Pam the Funkstress, rest in peace, had a there was one song where it was just her scratching on it, and I would play it at parties and pretend that I was doing all the scratches on the turntables. And like none of the people at our parties really had ever seen something like that before, so like I feel like I did fool some people. And then when we we played a couple shows with the Coup, I confessed to her that I totally like jacked it and tried to pretend that I was doing all her cuts. I think she found good humor in that. But Boots is his political mind, I don't know if I agree with everything that he's on, but I love that he's on it. I love that he communicates it so well, and he brings it to all different crafts. The fact that he's doing like these big time movies, I mean, they're still independent, but they're incredible. What was the name, what was that big one recently that came out? You should, man, it's on the tip of my tongue.
It's Sorry to Bother
Yeah,
You.
when I saw that, I was like, damn, this, he's just on some whole other shit. Because I know the movie side of things is extra levels of preparation, execution. You have to like, everyone works like an army or the military, like everyone has their one role and has to like be in lockstep. And I've seen it from the sidelines. I've never been fully engaged in it myself, but I just, from the sidelines, I look at it and say, that is a bit beyond what I could take on myself. So
Working on a movie that's where my career began. I made feature length films for a long time, but I later discovered I wasn't good at it because I'm not a great collaborator. I want all the control of what's in my head. I don't like anyone else trying to tell what I want to tell.
yeah, movie making just seems like, especially if you're doing high level releases, is mostly everyone making a bunch of concessions until you happen upon something that everyone's like, all right, that's good enough, all right, I'll accept that. But it's not someone's main vision for the most part. And I don't know, that's movies probably suffered a lot due to that for a long time. But now I think you see people taking on projects themselves. With technology being where it's at, things have gotten a lot more easy and more affordable, that you can see people execute their vision in really powerful and quality formats.
The fact that you can shoot a feature length film on an iPhone is something.
Yeah, for real.
Are you a collab?
Yeah.
Do you find that you're a good collaborator, or do you prefer to have the only brush on a canvas?
Um, vocally, I'm not a great collab artist. Like if the other vocals are involved and other lyric writing is involved, but I love working with different types of music and different types of producers. I mean, I like to work with both, but I would say I'm much better working with different producers and letting them, push my style in different ways rather than me having to juggle my lyrics with somebody else's lyrics and it not feel like it's my song. Yeah.
How long did it take you to learn all of the lyrics of Colors?
I don't know.
I asked that question because I think I heard some on an interview or something. There was some footage or some audio of you rapping the Ice-T Colors lyrics when you were a kid. Sounded like it was like an old tape deck. And I just have memories of when I was a little kid trying to figure out all of the lyrics to that song using the tape deck, just playing it, pausing it, trying to write down what lyrics was there, and then rewinding it, trying it again.
I wrote those lyrics. I still have the notebook where I wrote all the lyrics down, and most of them are probably incorrect. But as as a young kid, I tried to make as much sense of what Ice-T was saying as I could. We saw that movie in a drive-in theater. I remember that. Where I lived, there was a drive-in theater, and I bought the tape, the Colors tape, the soundtrack, and that's one of the only good songs on the whole tape.
It's right. It's true. It's true.
Yeah,
I just heard someone, my friend Quentin, just told me Body Count just won like a Grammy or something. Or
yeah, it's crazy.
Yeah, I didn't even know they were still recording. That's awesome.
Me neither.
What was your first concert?
The first legitimate concert was the Run's House tour, which was Run DMC, Public Enemy, EPMD, DJ Jazzy Jeff, and the Fresh Prince, and that was at the Providence Civic Center in 1988. My mom brought me and a friend of mine, and that was the first time. I think that was the first time I was exposed to Public Enemy. So it made such a big impression on me from that point forward that it's just a dream come true that I ever got to like do shows with Public Enemy and have a connection with Chuck D, and just stuff like that is more than I could have ever expected. And I'm really happy about it.
Yeah, that's awesome. I know you talk about punk a lot. Is there a correlation between the punk scene and indie hip hop?
Oh yeah, for sure.
What
for
do you think
sure.
that is? The energy or
Just the do-it-yourselfness of it. Of there was the independent hip hop scene. Once more and more people caught on to the fact that the major labels were not going to pick up or support a lot of what we thought was the most interesting stuff in hip hop. Um, and that we could press our own vinyl because everything seemed so out of range and magical, and just how do you do this, how do you get this in stores? And so the more connections that were made, and the internet helped with that eventually, but I would say in mid 19 like 95, 96 is when Company Flow was, put out their first album, and a lot of 12 inches were coming out. The college radio was supporting independent artists, so people were getting heard and known about. And then uh, the infrastructure built from there. And once the internet became more popularized and more people had access to it, we were able to build careers and live off of the music that no record label could have ever expected would be popular. I mean, myself included. If I couldn't prove that there were people like you downloading all my stuff off Napster, and the only reason I could do that is because I was then able to play every city in the states and even in many parts of the world. Even though I had no sales history, I had fans. So then they became like, their antennas went up and they started realizing, oh, there's money out there to get. We just have to figure out, how to suppress all the other shit.
do you have a bitter sweet relationship with that whole Napster and digital downloads and that, or is it? I mean, do you have an opinion on that? Like it does.
Oh yeah, I have a million opinions on that. My opinions on that have changed over time. I would say back when it first started happening, I was incorrectly frustrated by it. Because my whole experience with making music, I mean, making money off of music, was the hand-to-hand sales with people, and I would do consignments with random shops. And if someone downloaded my stuff without paying for it, I took offense to it. And I was like, man, just, I need to live, and I need to get paid from this music if you want more music. But in actuality, during that time period when people were downloading music for free, a lot of them were still in the process or in the habit of financially supporting artists that they really dug.
Yes.
So if they found a path to support that artist financially, they would do it. And in fact, it was not uncommon during the time for me to do a show and for a fan to just like stop by the merch booth and give me $100 and say, here's $100. I downloaded all your shit. I
Yeah.
feel bad. So back then, people carried a certain bit of guilt because they had always bought their music right up until that point. Now, 20 years later, people have as much access to all the music in the world, if not more, than they did during the Napster days, yet they don't feel the same pressure to support the artist financially, because if they have a $10 subscription to Spotify, that satiates, their need to feel like I should do more, So it's a very, very odd reality to live in now, where I'm like, I've been telling people fuck Spotify forever. And and then I got scared because certain promoters would be reluctant to book you if you didn't have a large following on Spotify, you know. So
I don't have a opinion on it because I don't make my living from the music. But I come from a time where I still want to support the artist financially by buying merch and stuff like that. But
yeah, I mean, and you do. We at Strange Famous Records, we've always made it a habit of having a direct contact with fans and try to have as much physical product as feasible for them to support if they want it. So we, that in itself comes with overhead expenses, and there's a lot of things we need to consider in a time where people are buying less and less music.
yeah,
But thankfully, we're making do, and we've had a ravenous fan base who's been supportive and returning customers over the years. So we're lucky for that, and I'm lucky that we were on top of that ball way back when, so that we could just continue to build upon the foundation that was created in the late 90s.
Is road life done for you for a little while?
Yeah, road life, I don't foresee. You'd have to ask me in maybe 3 years if I can even start thinking about it again. But I have a baby boy now. We're also raising two young, beautiful girls. They're in school. They're playing sports. Um, we live in a place where we don't have much support. Like there's no one who can babysit. We're taking care of everything ourselves. It's a lot to take on, and I also lost the inertia. I don't have the momentum that I was experiencing for all the 2 decades of touring heavily. And I all the pain and the frustration and expenses that and preparation, everything that goes along with tour life, the the physical, spiritual, mental pains, the all the tolls that it takes on one. You can ignore it for a while if you're just going and going. And now that I've stopped for over a year, when I start to think about if I could do it again, I start to get anxious and nervous and like I don't want to feel that again. I don't want to be away from my family. I will miss them much more than I've missed anybody when I toured in the past. So I'm lucky that I got to this stage in my life and I did as much as I did right up until this point in my life where I'm not going to miss it. The only thing that I would miss is being able to pay my bills comfortably. So I got to scurry and scavenge and do other things, try to figure out ways where I can make a living without leaving my family for months at a time.
Yeah, it is a difficult living on the road is really difficult, especially when you have a family at home. What's your most favorite, or what's the coolest thing about what you do for a living?
Um, I guess the coolest thing is I get to give a platform for the worlds that exist in my mind. And if I have something that I'm hearing in my head, I get to make it a reality. And whether people are into it or not doesn't matter. The fact that I can just put it out there, and thankfully sometimes or a lot of times there's an audience for it, but I don't do it for any particular audience. I'm just satisfying my itches. I scratch those itches. Yeah, and no one gets to tell me no. No one gets to say you gotta kind of reel it back in. You can't go that way, you gotta go that way. No one ever gets to say that to me. And I am grateful for that. I am grateful that I get to live that life.
Well, are you currently writing, and like, are you noticing a change, like being a family man? Are you noticing a change in your writing?
I'm not writing much, but I don't write often. My writing often is like 90% of me living life and then finally getting the opportunity to sit down and type away and let it come out of me naturally. That's exactly how The Best of Times was written. I mean, I wrote that in one night because I had a deadline. The music arrived that the night I wrote it, and I was like, okay, what am I gonna do? And it just, the way that song came out of me was my whole life just flowed, like parts, like the weird parts of my life, the things that I always kept inside that I didn't think was worth mentioning. And then I realized, wow, a lot of people probably will relate or understands the awkwardness of youth and what you hold so heavy in your heart when it feels like it's the end of the world. And then later in life, you can look back on it and laugh, but it's not funny at the time. And it's not the best of times when you're living that situation. So
You captured it so well, and I think that's what I legitimately was crying. I cried every time I'd hear it, and I'd share it with people. And while they were listening to it, I could see them getting goosebumps, and then I would start getting teary-eyed again. But because it is so, yeah, you absolutely nailed it on that track. Yeah, you just
thank
displayed
you.
it really well.
I'm just, it's funny what people like. People would tell me like, "Hey, this is my life. What are you doing?
Yeah.
How'd you know about my life?" Like, I don't know. I didn't know so many people lived the same exact fucking childhood as I did, but here
Yeah.
we are. Yeah.
Yeah. What song or what album has been your best selling or most listened to, or
It's a toss up between personal journals and a healthy distrust. Um, A Healthy Distrust, because that's the album I got the most promotion behind and the most money was put behind it. It was the first album I did with Epitaph Records, and it was their first, I was the first hip hop artist to sign to the label. So they put a lot of push behind it. And I definitely benefited from that. It raised my recognition level a lot. But when Personal Journals dropped in 2002, this was after everyone had already downloaded all my stuff off Napster, and they were waiting for the official album. So as soon as it came out, like, people gobbled it up.
Yeah.
And that was on Anticon Records at the time, and it was their highest selling record. And I had made a name for myself. I had already toured the world. I was already touring in Europe and Canada, all over the States. So I had established a fan base that was ravenous and ready to support. So that album, and also was during a time where there weren't a billion albums all coming out every week. So I feel like that might be the most listened to. It's a toss up between that and A Healthy Distrust.
What if someone was going to discover your music for the very first time? What album or song would you want them to discover you with?
I mean, I feel like A Healthy Distrust is the most accessible. There's a lot of songs on there that are just so well produced, and it's not as jarring as some tracks on Personal Journals, because Personal Journals has a very raw approach, and it's very jazzy in the way that I'm not particularly like in a pocket. Sometimes I'm just kind of varying outside and saying words that don't necessarily fit what people would expect with a hip hop song. So if they were on the fence about, I mean, it depends on the kind of person. If they're a hip hop head, I would say A Healthy Distrust. If they are a more eclectic type of dude, or were more into like different genres, I would say Personal Journals, because they would listen to it and be like, oh damn, I didn't know you could do hip hop in this manner. This is a sound, this subject matter I'm not, you don't often hear discussed in hip hop songs. So that's the one I would present to them.
Yeah, because I mean, if you are a hip hop head, then you already probably own all of Sage's, or should by now. I mean, I guess there are new young hip hop heads coming out, but
Yeah, but those albums are so old, they probably don't even register as hip hop to a lot of the new hip hop listeners.
yeah.
The style and sound is so different these days that maybe it's just it should be considered its own genre at this point.
If you didn't end up making it as a hip hop artist, what do you think you would have ended up doing? What would you be working as?
I was trying to be a music journalist. That's kind of why I studied journalism in college, but I didn't see many pathways toward that being a reality. Um, I loved working in radio, college radio, but that's only because I could talk a lot of trash, and I couldn't do that on a commercial radio site or commercial radio station. The way I was making money and what I was dedicating myself to was martial arts, and I was a private trainer, and I taught classes, and I wanted to pursue mixed martial arts and the UFC stuff when it first happened, because I was grappling, I was kickboxing, I was fighting. It was mixed martial arts. There was jujitsu, there was kempo, there was kung fu, it was like a mix of Japanese, Hawaiian, Chinese, and I had done that for almost my whole life, right up until I was in college. And then I did make some money in college by doing personal training, but once I got involved in the spoken word scene and focused more on music, it took me away from the discipline that was necessary for the martial arts, because I just couldn't train as often as necessary. And it was a lot of travel at the time, driving around in my broken down car. I couldn't do it. But I could see that that would be the way that I probably would be making a living. that that is what I see in my parallel lifetime, where I didn't splinter off into the arts. I just stayed into the martial arts. I didn't splinter off into the vocal arts. Yeah.
So if not a rapper, a UFC trainer. You had mentioned something earlier about being on the radio, which made me think of this one. How about Baba Booey or Booyah Tribe?
I would have to go. I mean, shit. I don't want to pick Baba Booey, but I'm more familiar with Baba Booey. Booyah Tribe was more of Booyah Tribe to me was more of a myth, is like a mythical group of people, Samoans that I didn't understand. I didn't know as a kid growing up in Rhode Island. Booyah Tribe was more a reference to, like, they didn't have I didn't see videos of theirs on UMTV Raps. They weren't played on our radio, and I just was never familiar with the actual music. I just knew it was kind of a movement and that they were badasses and they rolled deep, and you don't fuck with Booyah Tribe. So that's my experience with Booyah Tribe.
Yeah, I'm Samoan, so it's like a prerequisite. Like it's something you have to know.
Yeah. So is it sort of like Menudo for Samoans?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
That and the Jets.
Oh yeah, okay.
Yeah, I'm a huge Howard Stern fan too,
Nice.
so that's why I draw.
I mean, I knew Baba Booey was, I mean, Howard Stern radio was what I would listen to when I was painting dorm rooms back in the day. And, it was like the edge lord, like Howard Stern was your access to edgy material or even nudity. If, you could get the tapes of his specials. So, but he was a clown, right? I mean, Baba Booey, he wasn't like respected, so I can't pick Baba Booey. I got to go with Booyah Tribe.
Do you have a favorite spot, like city or venue or country, something, anything? Do you have a favorite place?
Oh man, I do, but there's many. Hawaii is incredible. Hawaii was, but it's very expensive and it's so far away, and it's like, yeah, this is paradise, but it's also a tourist trap. But we played areas that weren't touristy and they were incredible. Um, Amsterdam, as typical of an answer as that probably is one of my favorite cities to go to. It has everything. I just love being there. Um, Iceland is I've been to several times that I always find myself in discussions about Iceland to people who are like, where should I go? What I was like, Iceland's really not that far away. It's surprisingly close. If you live on the East Coast, it's surprisingly close. And for 3 days, you'll keep yourself busy. They drive on the right side of the road. There's beautiful things you can check out, and then you're home in 4 days. That's a perfect vacation time for me.
Yeah.
So,
And at one
um,
point, tickets to Iceland, like just last year, I think they were like $75 round trip tickets to Iceland. We've been wanting to go. I've been
wow,
wanting to
yeah.
go for a while.
I recommend it. I find it's really like when you land into Iceland, it makes an immediate impression because it looks like you're landing on the moon. This area that was created by lava rock is just like it's just that sets the mood properly for what you're about to experience, which is different. I like going to places where I feel like I'm in a different place because the world has become so homogenized that you could travel 10,000 miles and feel like you're in New York City. I don't like that. I want to be in a place where I feel like this is definitely different. Japan was awesome. I mean, I wish I could have traveled to more Asian countries, but every time I went to Japan or even South Korea, I like the feeling that I'm in a different place and the food is much different and I don't know what I don't know what to expect. So it's all brand new.
Well, you
It's
can come
nice.
out. We got some land and property in Samoa and a big family out there and a big house out there that no one stays in. You're welcome to come stay with us in
Really?
Samoa.
Yeah. Hell,
It's pretty awesome
that's
out there.
awesome.
It's Hawaii without the tourists. What would 23-year-old sick of waiting table sage learn from today's sage?
Ooh, life's about to get a whole lot fucking different. Um, Enjoy being 23, enjoy the freedom, enjoy living by zero rules. Oh, because at this point, if I'm lucky to have lived that life so that I don't live with regrets now. Um, I have a lot of restrictions now. I have a lot of responsibilities. It's not just me I have to care for. It's not just me I have to look out for, and that can affect me, and that does affect me in several ways. And it will affect my music. It will affect um, my access to the public. It will affect just my public persona, because I would take risks back then that I never would do today. And maybe I was dumb for some of the risks that I took, but that's why I was such a wild and like loose cannon of a character. And I had to be that in order to become who I am now. So I would tell them, just, maybe stay in touch a little bit closer with certain family members that you're not going to have for much longer, but also don't feel restricted and don't feel like you can't do something because it might, you know, go against someone else's beliefs. Just be you, motherfucker. Be you.
Is there any artists out there or any other musicians or something that you would like an opportunity to collaborate with?
Yeah, there's a lot. I mean, I've been encountering tons of new music and new artists who, either hit me up directly, or because I work with a lot of producers who work with several rappers. So the sphere gets bigger and bigger, like some on the West Coast, some in the Midwest, some outside of the country. And so I become privy to what other people are doing. And now we're juggling several projects that I expect to release, some of them before the end of this year, even though nothing has been released in a long time on Strange Famous. But there are several projects that are bubbling up, and I don't want them all to explode at the same time. So I'm trying to like pace it out so that we have proper release dates that aren't or overlapping with each other. Um, and I don't even want to say what the projects are at this point, because I'm just gonna
There are definitely things coming out of Strange Famous.
yeah, and there are new artists that we're working with. We also are working with old artists who have a whole new path, all new names. They're changing everything. COVID, the COVID period, the quarantine period, the lockdown period affected motherfuckers, man. Like, it made people change. It made people have new perspective on how they're going to move forward, how they're going to work. It taught a lot of us how to work out of the home, how to be isolated and still get stuff done. And then now it's to the point where almost nobody that I work with is expecting to tour.
Right.
But they're making music. And now when you're not touring and you're not thinking of making music for a live crowd, that opens you up to new possibilities in your music, which I prefer. I always want my music to be more theater of the mind than it is a rah rah, throw your hands up at a show. So I feel like that's going to be our bread and butter, whether financially or not, but just our content, um, that's going to be flowing out of us is going to be a lot of theater of the mind and interesting narratives in hip hop, and maybe some just instrumental stuff that um beats are a lot easier to make now than they were when I was coming up. So it's, I might even fuck around with an instrumental project at some point. But I'm also working on a podcast. So
Yeah. What do you have a name for the podcast?
I do. What's funny is at the beginning of the lockdown, I came up with the name of the podcast. I got the logo, I got the theme music, everything. And then I never did anything with it because I just never set up my studio computer. My baby boy was born, and life came at me fast. But I've been collecting data and words and ideas and stuff that I want to discuss, and the podcast is called Hard Lurk. So Hard Lurk is where I don't feel as comfortable as I used to, with the constant engagement online. I used to pride myself in being able to engage with all the fans, get myself in arguments and hold my own. And now I can't do that. But when I see something that kind of like piques my interest or irks me, I jot it down and I'm like, you know what? I'm going to address this in a podcast. I'll talk about my feelings on it. You'll hear it with my tone. It won't just be the dry text on screen, which can be misinterpreted or taken in various number of ways. Before the end of this year, I'll probably have a few of these. Like, I'll test them out, see what's what. Maybe I'll interview people. Maybe I won't. Maybe I'll just talk shit. Maybe I'll make up stories. Maybe, I have no idea. Just like, it's nice to have a logo.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And it is kind of just an extension of what you already do. I mean, it's just another way for you to use your words and the things that are on your mind.
Yeah, but it's also good because my music, being a wordsmith in music, is I have to concentrate for long periods of time for me to say exactly, like I have to use a Sharpie, not a Sharpie, I have to use like an X-Acto knife, get everything exactly how it's going to be. But when I talk about it, I'm given more liberties, to have a conversational approach to subject matter that is heavy or light or funny or serious. So I look forward to that.
Do you have a proudest moment in your career, or some sort of accomplishment that you had?
I don't really, there's no one moment that sticks out too much for me. When Personal Journals dropped and I saw it in the record store where I had been buying all of my music, that was a special moment for me. Playing shows with Public Enemy, like I said before, and having Chuck D approach me at a picnic table where I was sitting all by myself, is like that's a special moment.
What happened? What
And
goes on in your mind when something like that, when Chuck D's approaching you to?
it feels like a fantasy, like it straight up feels like a dream. It feels like I can't believe this is happening. This guy, I've looked up to him for so long. I mean, cherish the dude's music. I cherish his approach. I cherish his work. Um, so that meant everything to me. But at a certain point, you're like, I don't want my brain to explode. So I stop thinking about it. And then I just engage in a regular adult conversation.
So, what's the best way for people to support indie record labels and to support Strange Famous Records and to support you as an artist? What can be done, like especially now with the pandemic? Most venues have been closed for the last year, and some are slowly opening, but the touring has been pretty much non-existent. So, what can people do to support your record label? And also with streaming music, I mean, I don't even know really how that works as far as getting paid for a record label. But what is the best way for people to support Strange Famous Records specifically, and to support independent record labels?
We try to make it as easy as possible for people to support us at Strange Famous. If you go to the website, you can download things digitally. If you don't want to pay shipping prices, I offer handwritten letters. I offer personal videos or freestyles if you want. But all of our artists, we try to make sure that they have different types of product available. If you just want to throw money at us, our PayPal is strangefamousrecords@gmail.com. But we're trying to produce and pump out quality material when it feels right to do so. So if you just stay in touch with us and engaged with us, follow us on the social media, maybe, retweet things from time to time, show that you're actually engaged and involved and interested. All of that, whether it's financial or whether it's morale boosts, they're appreciated, and they're recognized. We don't turn a blind eye to the support we get online, because that is our lifeline to our fans and also to our music careers. And it means always meant the most to us. It's how I built the Strange Famous record label.
I remember once hearing in an interview you mentioned how you'd spent so much time curating an audience through MySpace, and then MySpace pretty much became obsolete once Facebook came out. And I completely related to that because I spent so much time curating an audience for my artwork for my Facebook page, and then Instagram came out, and I was deflated. I'd spent all this time on the Facebook audience,
Yeah.
and then all these people were moving over to Instagram, and I felt like, I have to start building a new Instagram following, because things like social media matter for independent companies, for definitely for myself as an artist. I can reach my audience through social media, so it is important, but it takes a shitload of work. And so my question to you is, are you still keeping up with that? Because I realized as I've gotten older, it is getting harder and harder to keep up with them. New platforms are coming out seems like every couple of months, to Twitch, to TikTok, and then you build them and they drop. Like Snapchat was on for a while, then it disappeared, then it came back. So again, my question to you is, are you keeping up on that, or what's your feeling on that?
I can't ignore where people go. You know, if there becomes a new town center of the internet, I have to be there in order to access our fans and give them access to us. So
Do you have interest in gathering this like younger fans, or is a main part of your focus maintaining your base that you have?
well, the old people are dying,
Yeah.
and the older people are becoming more family oriented and less interested in keeping up with everything. So it's good to have to replenish your fan base with a youthful movement, but we don't pander to what's popular in the youth movements. I think there will always be people, no matter what age, if they like the kind of hip hop we make, and if they happen upon it, they're going to be fans of it. And they're going to know they weren't pandered to, and they found it on their own. And we do have young fans, which I love. But yeah, I don't know. There's never a targeted campaign where we're like, we're going to hit this demographic and make sure that, you know, we touch upon what they find as interesting.
What are the ages of your kids?
7, 5, and 6 months.
Yeah, I have a 15-year-old and a 13-year-old, and the great thing about when they get into that age, that you start getting connected to their people, like the younger generation are so smart and hip and caught on and just know things that we just had no idea, and it's kind of inspiring. But yeah, I'm curious to see if you're still writing music and stuff, what comes out of that with teenagers.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think they're going to find it very interesting, but I think there's going to be a contingent of people who want to hear hip hop that is not pandering in any style or fashion, and it just is a dude exploring mental landscapes and telling stories that somehow popped up in the midst of words. That's how my writing has been going. I'll just be writing paragraph after paragraph, and I'm like, wow, this world is forming all on its own. Where do I start it and end it now? So I have to take out chunks from large bits of writing and be like, this is probably palatable enough for, you know, another person outside of me. But look at this drawing.
Yeah, now that's perfect timing because the timer is right at about 45 seconds.
Look at that.
Yeah, this is for you, my friend. So
Love
I will
it.
send this over to you. That was the buzzer that just went off. Well, Sage, I am honored that you joined me for a DOD45 discussion. I learned a lot, and I really enjoyed having a conversation with you. You're well-spoken, which is always a benefit. My adjective recall is awful, so having conversations with people who can work their self around the language is a major inspiration to me. So I appreciate it.
Thank you, brother. Yeah, well, this was great. Thank you for having me on. I can't wait to put this up on my wall.
All right, Sage, have a good rest of your week. I really appreciate you. Here's the drawing that I did for Sage's discussion, his cat and elephant. And please continue to listen to DOD45. Please go to Strange Famous. The website is strangefamousrecords.com.
Strangefamous.com or strangefamousrecords.com.
Please go and support Sage if you don't already support him and his label.
And Bandcamp is always good too.
Yeah, Bandcamp's a great place, to support artists. So, okay, well, thank you, everybody. Have a great rest of your time, and cheers.
There are thoughts in my head that take place in my bed, and I don't have to lie.
Thanks for watching this episode of DOD45. I hope that you enjoyed yourself. Make sure you hit that subscribe button. I don't want you to ever miss an episode. Also, stick around my YouTube page for a bit. There's a whole array of videos to enjoy, including time-lapse videos, drawing tutorials, and live streams. It's like an amusement park. Now click that subscribe button and go watch another episode of DOD45. Cheers.